Good morning, everyone. My name is James Thomas. I am a budget analyst with the Manhattan Borough President's Office, who handles all public schools capital funding. Our budget team consists of Vanessa Diaz-Lopez, who is the budget director, Nelson Andino, budget analyst, who handles nonprofit capital funding. We will also have our deputy borough president, Mr. Matthew Washington, who will be with us as well. The Manhattan Borough President's Office would like to thank each person who signed up for the fiscal year 22 Reso A capital funding information session. This afternoon's rundown will include remarks from our very own Manhattan Borough President, Gail A. Brewer, representatives from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, New York City Department of Design and Construction, New York City Office of Management and Budget, as well as two nonprofit organizations, Brother Sister Soul and Cabrini Immigrant Services, who will talk about their experience with the process, projects, and their successes or challenges, and provide some feedback to you.
These motherfuckers will be on.
We will have the chat feature open for anyone who would like to ask any questions, comment, or share any links or any additional information. If you would like to ask a question for any of the presenters or organizations, we ask that you type your questions in the chat box located on the bottom of your screen. We also ask you to please keep your computer or phone muted during this information session. At this time, I turn it over to our fabulous Manhattan Borough President, Gail Brewer.
Thank you very much, James, Vanessa, Nelson, and I want everybody who is involved, and I thank people who have signed on, to know that this team is doing way persons above what I think is normally done in terms of the borough president's offices, because we care so much about you as the really most important sector nonprofit in our city. So thank you for participating, and thank you for the budget staff for putting this all together. I wish I could give everybody the amount of money that they deserve, because to be honest with you, every single nonprofit that applies needs the funding. So we've been doing this in terms of analyzing, being as supportive as we can for the last 7 years. We have another year to go, so this will be our final budget. I have a feeling that it won't be huge. So to be honest with you, we're going to try to finish some projects that we have started to make sure they get done. And then obviously where the need is, we will do everything we can to meet it. We work with the city council in terms of trying to split sometimes the project so that it gets funded completely. And we also know if there's a huge need and challenge, we want to meet it. We obviously have not done a budget post-pandemic, and this is a whole new level of challenges. We are, very, very focused on everything that meets the challenges. And we've obviously during the pandemic, just like everybody on this call, we've been doing the food distribution, the PPE distribution. And as we speak right now, we're doing it in the borough where there are increases in the zip codes. We were there yesterday, I'll be there tomorrow and Saturday and Sunday. So I want to say the two individuals who have been selected to participate in terms of nonprofits, both Brotherhood and Immigrant, they are phenomenal. The leaders of both organizations, I'm very biased, but they are the best. And you will learn a lot from them. And I want to thank the agencies because they spend the time going over all these projects with us. So I leave you now with this amazing staff. I thank you. Obviously, you can call if there are any questions, but I know there's a lot of talking to come, and hopefully you'll learn a lot. And be sure to, make sure that you get the project in a way that OMB doesn't say no, because we often have that situation, with all due respect to OMB. Thank you very much. Vanessa, it's you. Go ahead.
Yep. Again, thank you everyone for being here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that we can go through the presentation. 1 second. Share. Beginning. Great. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about guidelines for nonprofit projects. We'll discuss also how to apply to our office. We'll have time for answers to questions at the end. Again, make sure to write your questions in the chat feature. James is helping us to keep track of those so that we can ask them at the end. And DDC and DCLA and a number of other city agencies are with us today to help in that part of the questions and answer. Know that we're not going to be exhaustive in the guidelines, but that we will be sending you a document that includes all of the guidelines for the nonprofit capital funding process. So let's start here. So in order for you to actually be eligible for receiving capital funding from the City of New York, you must have a non-for-profit status. And you have to be organized under the New York State law, or registered to do business under the New York State. You must also have city operating contracts prior so that you can show that you have an operating history. So if you're going to be applying for real property, and we'll discuss what that is in a few slides, you must have a pre-existing contract with the city for operating, an operating contract, and it must be in fiscal years 19, 20, and 21. So always the 2 years prior to the current year where you are applying. And if it's movable, sorry, I apologize. If it's movable property, then you must have a city contract for operating contract for fiscal year 21, the current fiscal year, at least for $25,000. Again, you have to demonstrate that you have the financial resources and that it will be enough from beginning to end through the useful life of the project that you're proposing. So how do you manage that project through all of it? And the useful life of a project can be anything between 3 to 30 years, especially if it's real property, which is between 20 and 30 years. Upon application, you will have to submit audited financials for the immediately preceding 3 fiscal years. I know this has been something that has been brought up in the past on concerns for some smaller nonprofits. It is a must that have to be provided in the application process. No way around it, unless OMB says something else, but that's usually what we hear. Please know that if you are a startup organization, if you have no staff at the time, let's say that you have an all volunteer organization, if you don't have paid and full-time staff, then, and it also would mean that you haven't been able to demonstrate a history of operating services and contracts. So you will not, those organizations would not be considered for application because they don't meet the baseline requirements. Let's see, okay. There are some exceptions to this and to the baseline requirements, and some of those are the housing projects. The housing projects, you do have to be a 501c3 and have a history of contracts. However, you don't have to have a history of contracts, but you have to show that you can do this work. It will be attached, the evaluation of that particular project will be attached to the loan program, the Department of Housing and Preservation and Development, HPD. They have a lot of tools for loan programs, and based on those programs is that your evaluation will be reviewed. It is a loan. It's important that people know that. And if you want to learn more specifically about the housing projects, I think it's best that you set up a meeting with us and we discuss that in more detail. It's just too detailed to go into this particular presentation. Another exception for the baseline requirements will be the cultural projects that are handled by the Department of DCLA, oh my God, Cultural Affairs. Too many acronyms. So you must have received institutional or programmatic support from DCLA, and you must have received it in 2018, fiscal year 2018, fiscal years 2019, and fiscal year 20. And in this time, also fiscal year 2021. There are some changes that they're making, and they could speak to that a little bit more, or you can contact them directly. We do have a slide that they put together that we will share with you when we send all of these materials that talks a little bit more in detail about their process requirements and tells you exactly where to go to be able to apply for them. It's a separate application. They did want us to let you know that if you're a first-time CDF recipient in fiscal year 2021, you should be contacting your capital project manager. And if you do not have one, then you can use the email on the screen, capitalrequest@culture.nyc.gov. Again, you will get this presentation, so no need to worry about jotting it down, to reach out to DCLA directly about this year's application process. Okay. So what are the types of eligible projects? So there's real property and movable property. So in real property, we're talking about acquiring property, land, buildings, and so on. And we'll hear a little bit on this type of acquisition and construction from one of our groups today, Brotherhood, Sister Sol. And then movable property is personal property, you know, such as purchasing a vehicle or anything that is not really attached to real property. So some examples of that would be acquiring land or a building, theater renovations and purchases of equipment for those theaters, building systems, HVAC systems. HVAC systems is everything that's heating and cooling, lighting, and so on. Vehicle purchases, which we mentioned, and outfitting new spaces, let's say, so that you can actually get a building and maybe you're seeking funding from our office to be able to just outfit that space for use. Okay. Also, your project must meet a city purpose in order to receive funding from the City of New York. So it must have a public benefit for the entirety of the useful life of that project. So if you were to acquire a building, for example, and then you want to turn it around, it must still, and sell it, right? Which we should talk about that, don't do that. Then it must still meet a public benefit as per the definition of the City of New York. And useful life is anything from 3 to 10 years for movable property and 20 to 30 years, no more than 30 years for real property. And obviously it needs to be a capital asset as defined by the directives of the New York City Controller's Office. And again, that document we will be sending to you. You can also access it in our website and in the OMB website. And it must meet a minimum city contribution of, for real property, $500,000. So that's the minimum city contribution. So the cost of what you're doing, right? It has to be at least $500,000. It has to be a little more, but $500,000 is the minimum contribution. And for movable property projects, it must be at least $50,000. So anything less than that doesn't meet the threshold for eligibility criteria. Very quickly, other requirements. If you're a private school and you are an elementary or secondary school, the city does not provide funding to private schools unless 100% of the students attending your school have disabilities and the tuition is being covered by the Department of Education. All projects will be subject to a 2.5 administrative fee because there is a city agency that is doing the administration of your project. Real property projects must have at least a 15% contingency built in. This is a reimbursement process. Always know this, you're not gonna get the money ahead of time unless you're a DCLA project and DCLA is managing your project. That is one exception there. And then know that you will only get reimbursed for costs that you incur after the appropriation of the funding. So let's say the budget starts July 1st of a given year. If you spend money June 30th on a project, you're not going to get reimbursed for those. And lastly, if you have not complied with prior agreements with the city, you will not be able to be considered for funding. And when I say you, I'm talking about the organization. So very quickly, some ineligible items. So if you're, you cannot buy cell phones, and you can't buy, this money can't buy the pens and the paper, and it cannot pay for someone to clean or the backup items or supplies for cleaning and so on. So remember, it is anything that is at least $50,000. So keep that in your mind as a way of thinking about it. So in that sense, a storage case, for example, for a laptop and so on, is not eligible. So I'm going to stop sharing here, and we'll use this opportunity then, since we talked about real estate property. I want to make sure that this year, we want to make sure that you could hear directly from people who have been applying for a number of years, have become experts at applying, and going the back and forth within OMB, the city agencies, and so on, and are moving ahead with being able to build bring great resources to their communities. And in this case, I'd like to bring to you the Executive Director at Brotherhood Sister Soul, Kari. And so, Kari, please tell us a little bit about the project that you have been working on. And so, go ahead, you're unmuted. And Elka, if you can please make sure to put up the slide for Kari.
So good morning, everyone. Thumbs up, you can hear me okay? All right. My name is Kari Lazar-White. I'm the Executive Director and co-founder of the Brotherhood Sister Soul. And, just wanted to share with you some of my experience as the lead project manager of the new building at the Brotherhood Sister Soul. So for background, Brotherhood Sister Soul is a 25-year-old organization. We are a social justice nonprofit organization that is the youth development space and works in 3 areas: educating, organizing, and training the field. In 1999, we purchased a small townhouse brownstone in Harlem, which was our home and headquarters for 18 years. In 2007, we purchased the land adjacent to our brownstone. And what we are now doing is building what you see in front of you, a 6-story, 20,000 square foot new home in Harlem for all of our work on the old lot where the brownstone was, and the new lot that we purchased subsequent to that, that was just an open lot. So on those 2 lots will be our new building. Adjacent to our building is a 3-lot community garden that is a New York City Parks Department Green Thumb garden. It's the most used garden in the borough of Manhattan. And we have been the stewards for 20 years of it. So this kind of just shows you the representation of what the new space will look like. We began this effort in basically 2015, budget cycle into 2016. So this is a 5-year effort to raise the money, go through the paperwork process, and build the building. We are scheduled for completion in next summer, so 21. So roughly 5 to 6 year total process. It is an $18 million building, all in terms of hard and soft costs. And, I want to just kind of outline some of the structures that we think were really important to making this successful, and the difficulty. I want to underline as many times as you can underline, and bold and underline and highlight that this is an unbelievably difficult process to build a building in the city of New York, to build a building that is a public-private partnership. It will take everything from your organization and take everything from your leadership. And so, if you decide to do this, just realizing that you kind of have to be really all in to bring this to fruition. We know lots of folks in the government sector who we work closely with, and uniformly people say that this is one of the most difficult things to do in the city. I think first you want to think about your team and who will do it. For us, it's been absolutely key to have a government relations team to help us build relationships and push this through city agencies. And we work with Kasira, who does phenomenal work. Our architect, of course, Urban Architectural Initiatives, our GC, Apex Building Company, and our owner's rep, the Gilbane Building Company. One of the things we're very proud of about this project as a Black and Brown led organization is that 90% of the expenses for this building are going to MBWEs, and really ensuring that we have, Black and Brown contractors and architects has been extremely important. we received approximately $10 million from assorted elected in the city of New York and the city council, and a little over $1 million from the state. So, roughly 2/3 of this project is government funded. It takes a huge amount of meetings. The application process is extensive. When you go through the application process, one of the things that hasn't been mentioned is the match mandates from the city. So being clear that you need money on hand to apply for city funding. There are a lot of details and specifics in government applications for capital support. So there's no kind of overarching list you will get. And I think this has been also a very difficult aspect of the project. You don't kind of receive a 10-page document that tells you everything you have to do. Every project's different, every match is different, every agency manages differently, whether it's EDC or DDC. So generally for our project, we needed an 80-20 match initially, the first $2 million. So 80% could come from the city, and then 20% from a private or non-New York City tax levy match. And then it moves to 50-50. So that gives you an idea of how much money you have to raise in addition to government sources. Throughout this process, there's probably been 10 different New York City government agencies involved with oversight, with processing, with review. The main four for us are EDC, who manages our project, OMB, who of course has to review almost everything with the city related to finance, city law, as the contracts are going back and forth, of course, the Department of Buildings. There are times where, to be direct, the city agencies are not always in communication with one another, and you may get different directives from different city agencies. One directive from City Finance, City Council Finance, one directive from OMB. And so you really need to bring the group collectively together to make sure that you have, kind of one direct message in place. I think one of the other aspects that can be difficult about this is that you really need to ensure that you have cash flow in place. So Vanessa mentioned this issue about reimbursement. So whatever your project is, you have to be able to expend that amount of money and then submit for reimbursement. So you may submit $1 million a month on a building like this, and you have to have the capital on hand to pay for it as you wait for reimbursement. Our initial request for reimbursement took nearly a year to be reimbursed. So it can take a long period of time before you get that reimbursement. Once you receive that first reimbursement, it can become more efficient. And so then you're waiting, several weeks as opposed to that long to get your reimbursement. But you have to think about that as well. So it's not just raising the money, but where is your access to capital going to be to cover shortfalls, to cover delays? You don't want to be building a $5 million project with $5 million in place. That's not going to work. You need a line of credit, you need loan, or you need additional capital. And it makes it, again, quite difficult. I think another area that's been clear is really needing, legal support and legal advice for this process. As nonprofits, there's a lot of pro bono legal support out there. A lot of law firms provide free legal support in these areas. And so building relationships with a law firm that maybe will do that for you pro bono. We work with Gibson Dunn. They do phenomenal work for us. And, that kind of in-kind donation means a lot of dollars to a nonprofit, building a building. We are not a large nonprofit building a building. We are a mid-sized social justice nonprofit building a building. So there's no excess, there's no endowment, there's no reserves that are covering this. So we have to kind of raise every dollar related to the project. We were deemed an essential business by the city and state of New York with the advent of COVID, and that allowed our building to go forward when a lot of construction was shut down in the city. That's allowed us to continue to meet deadlines and ensure that our building is going up and will be completed next summer. We currently have 6 stories of steel and the roof in place. And the next step is to enclose the building and then do all the finishing work inside of the building. Our architect is Anthony Shatemi from Urban Architectural Initiatives. And, we went through a long process to design what this building would look like. And we also needed his firm's support as we applied to the city. When you apply to the city portal for funding, they're going to ask for schematics. They're going to ask about what your building will look like in usage. And so being clear that you'll need that advice when you're first applying for money. Before you've gotten any money to build this building, you'll need that support and advice unless you have it, internally. We said to Tony early on, if you blindfold somebody and take them into a hospital, take off the blindfold, you're in a hospital. If you do the same in a jail, you're in a jail without question. Most countries have a Supreme Court where the edifice of the buildings seeks to intimidate you, and big steps to rise up to that courthouse. For us, we asked them to design a building that spoke to our mission about the enlightenment of children. And so to create a space where light cascades from the inside and out, where there's a play area on the roof that's green, that the whole building is built according to our themes of positivity, knowledge, community, and future, that was modern, but also reflective. And so the light kind of material matches the stone in Harlem that's, so present, and then the glass and openness allowing the light to come in. Our architect created a 20-second outside virtual tour, which I'll ask our host to play now, which just kind of shows you, what we've designed and what we've created, and the vision of what we're building. This is a community-based organization. We are based in Harlem. We work throughout the city, but what we believe is that our children deserve a beautiful building. They deserve a space that they love. They're already calling the new building Wakanda, and it speaks to, what they want and what they kind of desire as a space. That vision has driven the project. But the complications of the project are the day-to-day. To bring this to fruition, you have to go through, all of these kind of hoops with city agencies and ensure you're doing all your due diligence and ensure that you have a top flight team in place to navigate so that the vision comes to fruition. And so if you press play on this, you'll just kind of see the 24-second tour. So I was asked to share for about 10 minutes. It's been 10 minutes. I don't want to overspeak. I'm happy to answer any questions if they come up at the back end, but I would just end where I started about the complexity of building a building with city and state support, and the need to have a team in place that can really navigate through what will be an exhausting and time-consuming process. Obviously, the result of it will be hugely important. We could not build our building without the city of New York. We could not build our building without advocates who are elected officials, and Borough President Gail Brewer and New York City Councilmember Mark Levine were absolutely essential to driving this project forward, as were many other city council members, including now U.S. Congressman Richie Torres. So you need allies, and you need folks who will help to drive funding to the project, and we would not have been able to build it without city support. Yet with that city support and government agency support brings about an array of complications and difficulties that you'll have to navigate.
And congratulations on the work you've been doing. I now want to, and so just a few words on that. I think you nailed all of it, and also want to make sure that groups do know that we at the Office of the Manhattan Borough President are available to attempt to bring people together, those city agencies that sometimes need to be brought together by a third party. We are here for that, and you should tell us about your process. You should update us about what's going on with your projects, and we would also be able to support in getting city agencies together. So I want to then, I want to introduce Beatrice Chan. She is the Executive Director of the Immigrant Social Services. It's an organization who does a lot of work with the immigrant community. I don't want to speak for her. Do I see her? Beatrice, are you here? Okay, so Beatrice.
Hi,
Beatrice,
everyone.
you can take it on. Hi.
Okay, I am gonna share screen, and hopefully that works. Can you let me know if it's working?
It is working.
Okay, great. Good morning. My name is Beatrice Chen. I'm Executive Director of Immigrant Social Services. I joined the organization about 2.5 years ago. And at ISS, we really strive to respond to the needs of the community in Lower East Side and Chinatown. And as such, our core programs and services really focus on low-income immigrant children, families, most of them limited English proficiency, and many of them live in multi-generational households. So from toddlers all the way up to grandparents. And I was asked to share about our, I would say, I guess it's the movable property part of the capital project. The project type as the capital projects application, it's the standalone equipment and or equipment system. And our project name is ISS Computer Lab, which is exactly what you think it is. And we requested funding to purchase computer system for our learning lab. We had envisioned, we have a building at 137 Henry Street in Lower East Side, and we wanted to set up computer labs. And so the type of movable property, this will be in the application, so I'm just highlighting that. It is IT computer equipment system. It's very straightforward compared to what Kari presented. And on our movable property list, which you have to submit, it's essentially desktop computers, servers, printers, setup, and installation. And so that's kind of our direct ask, just thinking through, from an applicant's perspective, how to kind of frame the different questions and responses in the application. And this is our timeline. I've been through a couple of these, both in terms of capital project and the movable property. And I think every organization's timeline is very different. So I wouldn't use this as the standard. So we submitted, I think it was in March, which is when it was due. And we received the notification from Manhattan Borough President in July. And then in October, we got the email from DDC, and DDC really is the managing the process. So after you get the contract award. And so there's a bunch of paperwork to go with all of that. And so we started in November 2016, and the contract wasn't registered until I think 2018. A lot of that is going through OMB, budget and legal approval, and then before going to DDC. And once the contract is registered, we had a year, and we didn't start purchasing the equipment until October 2018. And we did the whole, we asked for the reimbursement in one set. And so, so for this, we submitted in August, and then we got the claim in September. So that's that was our timeline. And how does this fit in terms of our organization's mission? For the application itself, we really focused on bridging the digital divide, and mostly because the neighborhood that we serve, 50% don't really have internet access or reliable internet access. And most of our families use mobile devices and don't have a desktop computer or laptop. And what we found is that, for example, in terms of the professional world, there is still a need to know desktop applications, to know how to use computer systems and computer operating systems. And so that was really the need that we tried to fill for this particular computer lab initiative. On a broader scale, this particular initiative was tied to the upgrading of our building, 137 Henry Street. The building's 100 years old. And so as we look towards the future, we wanted to, first of all, make the building ADA accessible, and just upgrade the building since it's so old. And so that was our renovation project. So we essentially added an elevator to the building. And then with that, we were able to open up our building for community use. We'll have, more space for the community. And then, in terms of programming within the expanded space, one of the programming was having a computer lab, and making it accessible to the public. So that's kind of how we thought about our computer lab request, and also within the context of our organization's building, and then serving the community need. And I think, even, and I don't know whether it's just me, but sometimes I'm like, oh, all these other peer organizations are doing the exact same thing. But at the end of the day, there's still not enough to serve everybody, to make sure everybody has the opportunity and that choice to access all these resources. So with that, I'm going to end there. If there are any questions, definitely let me know. And I would also call out the former executive director, Charles Lai, who's also here. He actually started the application process. So he's here just to help me out if there are any questions that I can't answer. So thank you.
Vanessa.
Thank you. Thank you, Beatrice, for sharing with us. It gives you a sense of, the process that people go through when they have to apply. What are some of the needs that are presenting, sort of like what is also something that our office is looking for and paying attention to in the needs in the different communities when we look at these applications as well. Great, so I think we're doing good in time. I want to then go back here for a second and talk about how to apply to us. Here it is. So applications for nonprofits go through the CAP grants portal that is available in the OMB webpage. You have a link here present. That application hasn't opened yet. I think OMB is with us today and might add something about this maybe later on in the questions and answers portion. We do not know yet when the applications were open. I believe it's going to be in January, sometime mid or late. Please don't quote me on that, but we just don't, everything is a little bit behind given everything that's happening. My understanding is January. If that's not accurate, please OMB tell us on the chat or in the question and answer portion. So what do you need to do? You need to go to the CAP grants portal page and you need to create an account if you don't have one. You may have one already. And also, you do have the opportunity to meet with us to discuss your project if you want to. We'll be having virtual meetings, or it can be a phone call, but virtual meetings are a possibility in case that you prefer that way of communicating with us. The link is available here in this presentation. And again, we will be sharing this later on. Submit your applications with all the forms that are requested. Otherwise, OMB will not review them. So audited financials, every single thing, fill out every line in those forms. Otherwise, it will be kicked back and not reviewed. And obviously, step 3 is we're going to be reviewing those applications as they come in. So as soon as it opens, if you're able to and you have conceptualized your project, please start the application process. How do you know from on our end, how you find out that applications open is when you are signed up to receive our e-newsletter. So please sign up to receive our e-newsletter if you haven't yet. We have a link here in this presentation that tells you how to do that. And also you can go to our website and just check because we obviously will post it there when the application does open. Again, I think there was mentioned before by both presenters, the importance of reaching out to other elected officials. Our funding is very limited. Actually, this year might be even more limited than usual given the financial crisis. So even more important to be able to collaborate on these efforts with other elected officials. Be aware that your assembly members have money and your senators have money and your council members have money. And so it'll be good for you to know who those individuals are if you don't know yet. Here's a link that you can use to find out who those are. I would also add that you should reach out to them if you haven't yet. Make yourself known, let them know you're going to be applying. Everybody has a different process, but everybody at the city level does need to submit applications via the CAP grants portal, and be aware that the deadlines are different. And although I cannot give you a deadline on when it's going to open, I will tell you that your Manhattan Borough President application goes in first. But what you should know is that if you're trying to get money from your city council member, then you don't wait for the city council deadline, you actually submit it on our deadline. Hope that makes sense. Again, complete your application as early as possible. We're reviewing them as we move, as they come in, we start marking them for OMB's review. I'm assuming that OMB is going to be even more careful this year as they're reviewing applications, given everything that's going on financially. So I urge you to start early, submit early. The system gets overloaded, and at times then you will have a hard time uploading documents that you need to upload. These applications are a bunch of PDF files. So, I don't know how people are working right now, if you're working remotely, if you're working from home, how your internet capacity is, and so on. So be aware to start looking into a good internet, sustainable internet, PDF capacity, and so on, so that you can upload all of these documents. Some of them are quite large, so you want to also be paying attention to your IT needs. If you are working from home, I suggest you work now to figure out those issues if there are any. If you intend to repurpose funding, that repurpose means, let's say that you had a prior project, that project changed in some fashion, you got funding from someone else and you intend to repurpose funding, either for a new project or a different phase of that project, please do let us know ahead of time. There's a segment in that application that lets you mark that you are repurposing. We review a lot of applications, so it would be very helpful if you just let us know, hey, we're going to be seeking the opportunity to repurpose funding, and that we'll look for that. And submit one application. We do understand that there is a lot of need. These applications are quite challenging to put together, require a lot of your time. But in addition to that, please know we'll have very limited money this year. So make sure to look at your priority, at your top priority, and put that together. And if you need to discuss that with us, again, you can set up a meeting with us so that we can guide you through the process of eligibility criteria, but also potentially choosing, where to go this year with what to apply for to our office, etc. I remind you that we do meet with the elected officials, with the city council members, to make some of these decisions and try to share the cost of these projects. One of the challenges of this is that applications come first to the Manhattan Borough President and not to the city council. And at times we're having conversations with a council member who doesn't necessarily know at that time that an application is in, or they haven't reviewed it yet. So make them aware as well that you're submitting an application and that for consideration for both the Borough President and our office. Just some good practice to become aware, especially in a time where everybody's working from different spaces. And in the sense of our office, I urge you to reach out to the budget unit. I think all organizations have relationships at different levels in our office. So you have a a community board liaison, you may have a relationship with something related to land use and so on, maybe someone on education. The best people to answer your questions about budget is really the budget unit. We want you to get the correct information. And when we don't have the information, we find it. So please reach out to us. Of course, you can reach out to anybody, but no, ultimately conversations about the application should be going on with us because we're the ones who are going to be reviewing them. And then hopefully I'm not speaking too fast. And so now we can go to questions. If there are questions, we have DDC is with us. I believe OMB is with us. Hopefully I'm accurate. DCLAO is with us. Of course, we have our speakers. I say if we have any questions for speakers, we might want to prioritize that because they need to get on their, to the rest of their day. So James, are you?
Yes, there's a few questions that came in through the chat. I'll start with the first one. How long from the time you submit an application will you have an answer of whether your application will result in funding?
So, the answer to that question, the very generic answer to that question from our office, if we are awarding funding, you will hear from us after budget adoption, and budget adoption takes place, by July 1st is the new fiscal year. So in July of that fiscal year, you will then be getting a letter from our office letting you know what money you have received, or if not.
Next question is, how many individual grants does the NBPO anticipate awarding?
We can't answer that question. I will tell you that we review all the applications that come in. We work on making all of our applications eligible because so much changes through the process of looking at these applications, and an application may become ineligible, and then we want to be able to help another organization. Also, we don't know how much money we are going to receive until the preliminary budget comes out. I'm thinking that might come out in January, towards the end of January. So we can't possibly know how many we are going to be, how many awards we'll be making. But I'll say that we try to spread the love as much as we can. I urge you to go to our website and look at what we have funded in the past to give you a sense of how many applications we tend to fund on a given year.
The next question is, for our organization's last equipment capital award, all of our equipment was purchased by the city via an opening bidding process. Do organizations now have the option of purchasing equipment directly?
This question I see is coming from the China Institute, and I am assuming that it was a Department of Cultural Affairs award. And my understanding is that all purchasing with DCLAO funding has to be done via the Department of Cultural Affairs. I'm not sure if the Department of Cultural Affairs would like to add anything there.
Hey, it's Darren. Thanks, guys, for putting this together. That is true. We do the purchasing of all equipment for the cultural organizations. We do not do the funding agreement reimbursement method. That is correct.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes, the next question is, if your organization has already been approved for capital funding in the 2020 city budget, when do you expect contracts to be released?
The contract, if the organization, if the organization received the funding in fiscal year 2020, when do they expect the contract to be released?
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, I have DDCs here, DCLAO, OMB. I think their processes for the managing agencies are very different. David, do you want to add something?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Vanessa. And again, just to echo, yeah, thank you for putting this together. This is really fantastic. So if I understand the question correctly, and this year, I think, well, we've all heard this term overused. I mean, this is just the anomaly of anomalies of the years. And typically, as Vanessa said, the budget for the city is adopted and issued on July 1st. We usually don't really see the actual details of the budget until September. And that is typically when there are projects that are coming to the DDC, the Department of Design and Construction. In that early September, early October, as we reach out to all of the groups that have been identified in the budget to let them know that we'll be working with them to go through the process. This year, again, being this anomaly, the actual budget itself or plan did not actually get issued, I think, until November 19th. So if you were in the 2020 and if you did get a letter from the borough president or a council member in July, but you've not heard from DDC, that's why. We're literally now just working on that list. And you'll be hearing from us, if not by the end of this calendar year, early in January, because we're also working remotely. And so we're scrambling a little bit, but we're excited that the budget has been issued. Then in terms of the process, and thank you to Beatrice for really outlining it. And I think giving everybody a real reasonable time frame. It does take about 2 years in dealing with the capital program. And so her program, if I was listening correctly, took from 2016 to 2018. So if we start this in January or even in December, if you get the letter from us, and you'll be hearing either from Josh or Adele, two absolutely amazing project managers who have been doing this for the last 5 to plus 10 years. I won't put ages or numbers on it, but really, really excellent, a lot of experience, and they'll work with you and walk with you through the process. The only last thing I'll say, and then I'll stop talking, is if you haven't had a chance, and Vanessa will be sending this out with the rest of the information, we have I think a pretty good website that outlines everything that goes into a not-for-profit procurement that DDC manages, including timelines and FAQs. So definitely recommend everybody to check that out so you can kind of understand what this process is. So I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, that was very helpful. Thank you. James, any other questions?
Yes, the next question is for Kari. One person wants to know if you can elaborate on what city-state funding helped finance your organization's new headquarters, and also elaborate how the building will be utilized, community facility, offices, open to the public, etc.
The building will be 100% community educational use. It'll be for the programming of Brotherhood Sister Soul, for the training of the field, and to build out our organizing work towards social justice. We work in the space of racial justice, economic justice, environmental justice, and criminal justice. So that's what the space will be used for. We won't be renting it out. We are a community-based organization that have tons of community partners, and we service the community from our space. I mean, since the advent of COVID, we've stepped into the food relief space because our young people in our community were in desperate need. We've provided 350,000 meals since March, every Wednesday distributing food to our community and young people, again, 350,000 meals. So that kind of work will continue to be run out of the building, but this isn't a building that's going to be used by multiple organizations. It will be for the work and programming of Brotherhood Sister Soul and serving our community. With regards to the issue of where our funding comes from the project, and I spoke on this a little bit, but I'll just kind of outline it specifically. We received $1,150,000 from the New York State Assembly. That was processed through DASNY, Dormitory Authority of the State of New York. So 3 electeds in Harlem, Keith Wright, former elected, Denny Farrell, late assemblyman, and Robert Rodriguez. So 3 Harlem-based electeds directed money towards us. On a city level, the funding came from the New York City Council, collectively as a body. So the speaker has funds, and that was driven by probably 8 to 10 different city council members who advocated for us, at the lead being Councilmember Mark Levine and Councilmember Richie Torres. And the Manhattan Borough President's Office has supported this project over 2 budget cycles, as has Councilmember Levine. So those were most of the citywide elected officials. We've also received support from the District Attorney of Manhattan, Cyrus Vance, who has an asset seizure fund that funds, quote, anti-violence efforts throughout different parts of the city. So that's where, you know, most of the city funding came from. Our city funding is all processed through EDC, the Economic Development Corporation. And to the previous comments, I think you want to plan in, you know, a minimum of 2 years from approval of funds to receipt of any funds. That's a best case scenario. And that's with a, you know, really a world-class team of advocates doing support for us. So I said this in my earlier comments, our government relations firm is Casira. They are, you know, just top of the field, phenomenal folks over there. Without their support, without the support of other consultants, this would not move forward. So they've been vitally important to this, but as have our law, you know, our legal representation, and as has our architect and our GC, kind of really working collectively to move this project together. You know, all of that work is necessary to just reach the 2-year timeframe. With delays, it can be even longer. And we've run into some efficient process through city agencies and some incredibly inefficient process, just to be direct to it and, you know, not getting into all the specifics of it. But, you know, there's some maddening aspects to this that everyone who does it, people of good faith, people who are trying to move this through, people on this Zoom who know how difficult this process is, even with everybody trying to get it done. So this is a really exhaustive process. And I just, you know, want to be clear about that. And this is not, you know, kind of the standard efficient funding process that we have from foundations and from other spaces that we work with. It's just a nature, you know, it's the nature of the beast. And I think you have to be clear about that.
Thank you, Kari.
Hey,
The next
Vanessa,
question.
I'm sorry. I apologize. Can I just add to what Kari just said? Excellent point, Kari. And I just want to point out, because I do think a lot of phenomenal not-for-profit groups get funding from a lot of different sources, including the city itself. And a lot of the funding sources are typically expense funds, which has a very different process. The funds that we have been talking about today are capital funds. And the capital funds, which are basically funds that the city acquires through the sale of bonds, has to go through a very intense legal scrutiny by the city's bond council to make sure that these city-funded projects have a city nexus. So whether you're getting funds from the Ford Foundation or some other governmental organization, or you have an operating contract with a city agency, those are typically expense-generated contracts. These capital projects are completely different. And yes, you're right. The process is sometimes mind-numbing to ourselves as well. And you know, that's why it's really has to be a great partnership between at least our agency, the elected officials, and the not-for-profit as we work with the OMB, because the OMB is under a lot of pressure, and they're the ones responsible and speaking on behalf of the city's credit rating to get those great bond ratings that we currently have. So I just want to thank Kari for really raising that point.
Thank you. The next question is, does the city use a bidding process to purchase equipment for the organization, or can the organization purchase the equipment themselves? This may be directed to DDC.
Thank you. I think it's a combination. I think it's DDC and DCLA. So I think, as we heard earlier, when DCLA is doing it, they actually manage and do the procurement for the equipment. When DDC is the managing agent, it's the group that actually has to do it. We're not allowed to purchase the equipment or the vehicles.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is, will the application form requirements, even sample form from last year, be released before the application opens? It would be great to see the form so we can start preparing in advance. Can't hear you, Vanessa.
It's Owen B here in the presentation.
Yeah, we are here. Hi. You know, we are hesitant to put last year's application online just because we get applications from hundreds and hundreds of groups every year. And we know that if we put it online and we marked in big bold letters, this is last year's application, please don't fill it out, that some folks would miss that. Understandably, there's a lot to read, and would fill out last year's application and then would wanna have that application accepted. So we don't intend to post it. I can certainly share last year's application with the BP's office, with the understanding that as the BP's office shares it with individual groups, it be shared with the clear indication that this is last year's application. It should not be completed. This upcoming year's application is going to be very, very similar, but some of the questions are going to be slightly different. So it can be helpful to look over, get an idea of what types of information your organization is going to be required to produce. But we certainly don't want to be in a case where you've spent hours and hours and hours filling out a PDF that's almost identical to this year's PDF, but different in critical ways. And then you know, you have to re-go through much of that work. So for those organizations who would like to see a prior year's application, I think we can make that happen. We just don't intend to post it for everybody for that reason.
Thank you, Zach, for that answer.
Thank you, Zach. Next question is, does the city council funding have the same eligibility rules?
Yes. The guidelines for capital funding are established by the New York City Controller's Office, so they have to follow the same rules.
All right, thank you, Vanessa. This question is coming from Erica Haval. This is an eligibility question. Are COVID-related capital projects eligible? She's saying that specifically, she operates a number of congregate emergency shelter sites throughout the city, many of which have been de-densified into hotels for the time being, and they need to pursue ways to renovate, upgrade these spaces to ensure health and safety throughout the current pandemic once the clients return, and want to prepare for the future public health crisis. Examples of this work would include the installation of HEPA air units and filters, plexiglass barriers, and additional walls.
So my immediate answer to that would be those are not capitally eligible items. Zach, I don't know if you want to add something. Oh, actually, yeah, Zach, and I don't know if DDC as well. I don't even know who this would go through.
Yeah, the issue that a lot of COVID projects are going to run into is that they're not going to have a true useful life of 5 years, 10 years, 15, whatever type of improvement we're talking about. You know, and the organization is not going to have a plan for using it for that many years. It's certainly possible that a health clinic, hospital might need certain medical equipment now in light of COVID, but that they would also foresee being able to use even as we move beyond the current pandemic. So many of the sorts of projects that an organization might want to undertake due to COVID, like the shields that were mentioned, the plexiglass. To me, my initial reaction is, so what's going to happen after COVID? You know, after the vaccine is widely distributed. So it's going to be an uphill battle. But I could also imagine a case where there is some sort of equipment or other project that could be of use for the requisite number of years.
Thank you, Zach.
I think I would just echo what Zach said and just add, I mean, it really depends on what this project would look like. Are we talking about doing an initial outfitting of new space or a complete renovation of space? Because that would also maybe change the analysis. But again, you can't walk away from the bigger issue, which is the useful life. So the useful life is what drives it, but it also whether or not we're talking about just buying some equipment to make a office or space COVID proofed or safe versus you're getting new space or you're renovating space and it's been deemed as an initial outfitting.
Thank you, David. The next question is, if you are applying for equipment funding, does the equipment have to be located in a space that the organization owns or leases, or can it be to support programming run in a community center, school, or other space by the applicant?
So I'll take that question and others can, echo in, but, great question. As you'll see when you work with us, if the borough president or the council members give you the funding, we're going to be looking for very, very detailed information as to exactly where the equipment will be placed, how the equipment will be used, how we will define this as a public use. So whatever equipment you're getting, you can't move it around. The city needs to know exactly where it is. And then again, we go back to that earlier conversation of useful life. Is this equipment that will have the useful life for 5 years and it'll be 5 years in building A, or is this something where you're gonna be moving it around? And moving around is not, it's a possibility, but we'd have to know each and every location at the time that we're entering into the agreement. It can't be something that you subjectively will change depending on this time of the year.
Yeah, I would echo everything David said and just add that the organization that's applying and getting the funding needs to be the organization that is using the items, watching over the items, maintaining the items. And so most of the applications I've seen where movable property is being put into somebody else's space, we don't have that requisite on-hand sort of relationship between the organization and the items. I can think of one or two exceptions, but it's very fact specific. And we're really talking about scenarios where the organization is in the space every day, helping people use the equipment, probably taking the equipment out and storing it in a very specific space perhaps every day, every week. But it's unusual that that's the case. Generally, we don't have that sufficient control between the funding recipient and movable property that's in somebody else's space.
Thank you, Zach and David. The last question is for Vanessa. Will this session be posted on our website for those of us who could not attend the full session?
Question. Yes, we wanted to make sure to record this session, not only because we need to be, social distancing, but for purposes of people being able to get it whenever they wanted to review it. So it's going to be on our website, and we will also be forwarding the materials with the recording to everybody who signed up to receive this. So you should be getting an email from us likely tomorrow. I'll add to that we want to send you a tiny evaluation so that you can tell us how this worked out for you, and just give us some feedback on, I always wanted to do this with bringing people who are the real people doing the work. So we had that this year. I think I'd love to hear from you, what you thought about that. And so we'll be sending that as well. Is there any other questions, James?
No other questions in the chat.
Okay, great. Got it. So it's 12:10. I think we did really good discussing a lot of material, very cumbersome material. I don't dream that you fully understood all of the things that we discussed here. Maybe you did if you've been doing this for some time, but what I'm trying to say is we are available for conversations. We are available for meetings. We are posting a link for you to create a meeting with us. And we're really looking forward to reviewing your applications. I want to take this time to thank both Kari and Beatrice, and thank you, David and Zach and Darren and everybody else who's on board. I think David from DDC is also on, and Adele. And if I'm forgetting someone, please, thank you. I apologize if I can't see all the names in this mode. So with that said, thank you for all the work that you do. Please reach out to us if you need any help. And I will be following up with Zach and his offer to forward last year's application to us, and we'll then decide how to proceed with that carefully, Zach. Okay. All right, thank you everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you. Everybody have a good day.